You're listening to
Catholic Sprout,
the daily podcast for Catholic kids that strives to plant seeds of faith.
Greetings, young Squire Sprouts. Today is the 23rd day in the 9th month in the year of our Lord 2023. My name is Sir Roland Paterlot, and you're listening to Saturdays with Sir Roland on Catholic Sprouts, where every Saturday we discuss the art of dragon slaying. Today we celebrate the feast day of St. Padre Pio. St. Padre Pio was a priest who lived in the 20th century, not long ago, but many of the stories attributed to him seem like they come straight out of the Gospels. He was a fascinating person with many spiritual gifts that are very uncommon. First off, he received the stigmata, the 5 wounds of Christ, which were visible for the last 50 years of his life, and his wounds had a distinct aroma that smelled like flowers or perfume. Secondly, he had the gift of bilocation, meaning that there are reports of him being in 2 places at the same time. And third, he was able to read hearts in the confessional. For example, if somebody came to confession and was being deceitful or even forgot to confess a serious sin, he could tell them exactly what they did and when. Because he had this spiritual gift, many would come from all over the world for the sacrament of reconciliation. He spent many hours hearing confessions. Despite all of his spiritual gifts, he was a very humble friar his whole life and is known for his motto, pray, hope, and don't worry. My daughter and I have a special prayer we say each night asking for St. Padre Pio's powerful intercession. For our lesson today, I'd like to take a deep dive into the gospel reading for this weekend's liturgy. It is a very challenging gospel because in the story it seems like Jesus is not being fair. I think it's an important story for all brothers and sisters to listen to because it reveals how the orange dragon of envy can entice us to use that phrase, "That's not fair," especially when it comes to how our mom and dad treats our brothers and sisters. The real focus of the story should be how God slays the green dragon of greed, but you will see how the green dragon and the orange dragon can often work together to trip us up. In the parable that Jesus tells, a landowner hires laborers for his field. In the morning, he hires a bunch of people and they agree to a certain daily wage. But then at midday, he sees people who don't have a job and he hires them too to go out into the field. And finally, toward the end of the day, he finds more people who are just standing idle. And he's like, "Why aren't you working?" And the people say, "No one's hired us." So the landowner hires them too and they go into the field and work just the final hour of the day. Now here is where the story makes us cringe. At the end of the day, the landowner starts with the people who came last and pays them an entire day's wage. Then he pays the people who started at midday the daily wage. And finally, he pays the people who started early in the morning the same daily wage that they agreed upon at the start of the day. Now, let's put this story into perspective for you. Let's say your dad asks you to help him clean the garage on a Saturday and says he will pay you $5. At lunchtime, he sees your little brother sitting on the couch watching Star Wars and tells him, "Come help." Then around 5 o'clock, when the work is almost done, he sees your other little brother sitting in the backyard just complaining because he's bored, so he tells him to come help with the garage too. Then, to your utter shock, he hands your 2 little brothers a $5 bill before handing you your $5 bill. Let's be honest. What would you say? How would you feel? Well, the blue dragon of wrath would probably spark anger in your bones, and then the orange dragon of envy would cause you to shout, "Hey, that's not fair!" Those 3 words are like the sibling theme song passed down from age to age. For generations, brothers and sisters have been keeping score on who their parents love the most. You might get the coolest video game ever for Christmas, and then you look across the room and the green dragon of greed is always greener on the other side. You say, "Hey, Tommy got a live turtle. How come I didn't get a turtle?" Maybe you even do the math and you say, "My parents got me 18 presents and the retail value of these presents is only $121.28. Tommy's presents have a retail value of $127.42. That is totally not fair. Mom and Dad must love him more." You get the picture. So how do we make sense of this parable? Is God really that unfair? Well, let me tell you something you probably don't want to hear. God is just not fair. Did you catch that? God is just. He's perfectly just. He gives perfect justice, and justice is what we should seek. There's a difference between just and fair. Life isn't fair, okay? There, I said it. Life isn't fair. Stop trying to make everything fair, or you're going to be disappointed. In the parable, the first workers grumble about how they had to bear the burden of the entire day's heat, while the last workers only worked 1 hour and were made equal to them. Well, let's be honest, that isn't fair, which is why the parable can rub us the wrong way. But perhaps the story is about getting to heaven. Don't we want everyone to go to heaven? Let's say, for example, you spend your whole life struggling to fight against and slay the dragons of sin and temptation. At the end of your life, you hear those great words, "Well done, faithful servant, enter the kingdom of heaven." But then you see Joe Smo. He just hung around dragons his whole life and never tried to slay any of them. He just seemed to enjoy riding the dragons and sinning his whole life. But then he has a conversion right before he dies. He asks for forgiveness and mercy, and God lets him into heaven. Would you be angry or envious? Who got the better end of the deal there? You might be tempted to say Joe Schmo. He got to enjoy all the dragons and go to heaven anyway. But you would be wrong. Here's the thing. Working in the fields of the landowner, or being knights of the one true light and ladies of grace, and spending your whole life in the noble cause of striving to be great saints and getting souls to heaven, is an honor and a privilege. The workers' problem in the parable is that they saw working for the landowner as a burden. I see it as the best way to live, much more exciting and fulfilling than listening to dragons. For example, hockey is my favorite sport. One year we won the league championship. One of the guys on the team was injured, so he only got to play the last 2 games, but he still got the trophy just like the rest of us. I wasn't envious of him. I love playing hockey. Put me in, coach. I want to play. Or in life, put me in, God. I want to slay. Sure, it's hard and it takes a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to win a championship or become a saint. But I never wanted to miss a single game. It wasn't just the trophy I was after. It was the adventure of growing my abilities and getting better each week, and the time playing together with my teammates and listening to my coaches. In the same way, if your dad asked you to clean the garage, maybe you should be honored. You get to spend the whole day with your dad instead of being envious that he is generous and paid your brothers the same money for less work. My challenge for you this week is to rejoice when God is generous with others, not envious. It takes nothing away from his love for you. Avoid those 3 words, "That's not fair," and slay the orange dragon of envy. And until next week, I'll leave you under the protection of St. Michael the Great Archangel, St. Joseph the Terror of Dragons, and Mary, Queen of the Angels, Our Lady of Grace, and the woman whose seed crushed the head of the dragon.
That's it for Catholic Sprouts today. We'll be back tomorrow, but until then, continue to grow in your faith and truly sprout into the beautiful creation that God created you to be.
Hey, parents and kids, don't forget to sign up for our free Dragon Slayers Training Guild by going to extraordinarymission.com/dragonslayers. Each week we send a resource or a challenge of the week to help you become the best Dragon Slayers you can be. And remember, listen to Catholic Sprouts every day, including Saturdays with Sir Roland.
This podcast is part of the Spoke Street Network. For more great podcasts, visit spokestreet.com.